Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are around the world, and welcome to today's Postgrad Insight session. Today, we have a special fueling change studying energy law in a world of transition. We're joined today by Dr. Eddy Wifa and Professor John Paterson. Now, they're going to be taking us through the next 35 to 45 minutes, followed by a 10-minute Q&A, talking about energy law. It's an exciting topic. They're going to be talking to you about the cutting edge research that's happening at the Energy Law Department at Aberdeen. They'll also show you how the research directly informs the teaching, how energy law is both responding and driving global transitions. And it's a key sector as well, all around the globe. So, just before I hand you over, a reminder that today's session is live. If you have any questions, any concerns, any issues, please pop on chat or Q&A facility, and we'll endeavour to get around to you towards the end. But for now, I'd like to hand you over to Eddy and John. They'll be taking you through the next 30 to 45 minutes. Over to you guys.
All right, thank you so much, Garrett. Garrett, really great to be here and with Professor John Paterson. And we really try to do two things. First, we will give you some insights into studying at the University of Aberdeen School of Law, giving you insights about some of the programs. You'd see some of the lovely pictures of the campus. But we also want to introduce some of the areas that you will be studying or exploring if you do come join us, particularly because of how Aberdeen is well placed in relation to energy matters and globally. And so it'll be interesting to hear your take, or get to share some of these insights with you. And so we'll be doing both. We'll be talking about the School of Law broadly, but we'll also be engaging with issues around energy transition in the new legal order. Just a bit of introduction of myself. My name is Dr. Eddy Wifa. I am a lecturer, senior lecturer here at the School of Law, specialized in energy law as well as oil and gas matters. And I engage with issues around the Global South law research matters as well. And just, hopefully you join us. But I was a student here myself back in 2013, did my master's and went on to do my PhD. And, Professor John Paterson was one of my supervisors and did teach me during my master's. So let's say we've known each other for quite some time. But I've enjoyed my experience here, and that's why 12 years after, you can see me here as a senior lecturer. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an insight as to what to expect and how wonderful it is here being in the city, but also studying at the School of Law. I'll pass over to John for some introductions before we go ahead.
Many thanks, Eddy. You can see that this is an old photograph of me. I wish I still looked something like that, but never mind. My name's John Paterson. I've been at the university as a member of staff just over 21 years. Like Eddy, I also studied here, but a long time ago, back in the 1980s. I did my undergraduate degree here and then went off and did lots of different things and came back as a member of staff, as I say, 2004. I've been involved in energy law for, a long time. Probably started working on it early 1990s in one shape or another, and have been involved in one way or another ever since then. And particularly at Aberdeen, deeply involved in developing energy law as an area of study here. With colleagues, co-founded the Centre for Energy Law, our initial LLM and oil and gas law, which of course expanded into the programs that you see today. And I'm involved in research and writing, consultancy in various aspects of energy law, including also being involved in the Joint Advanced Masters program in the subject that we run with colleagues in Groningen, Copenhagen, and Oslo. Eddy, back to you.
Thank you, John. And so I will just show you some of the things we'll be covering. Yeah, we won't be talking about fees and accommodation because that's quite outside of our remit. But again, you could follow that link to get some information about tuition and accommodation and some of the scholarships that we're offering, both the global scholarship that you might find particularly interesting and useful. So first thing you ask yourself, there's so many universities around the world, why should you come to Aberdeen? Well, we're ranked 11th in the UK for law, and that's the Times and Study Guides. We're also 3rd in Scotland and 16th in the UK for law, and that's the Guardian University Guide 2025. We're 4th in Scotland and 17th. So very easily you can begin to see that we're very, very highly ranked university, and that's a testament to the quality of teaching and the amount of support that we do give students. For energy law, more specifically, we're top 10. So that gives you a sense, and that's in the world. So that's not Scotland, that's not UK, that is all around the world. We're top 10. So if you're thinking of energy law, what Aberdeen should be up there in terms of your choices. And we're the top 5 most sought after law school in the UK, and that's from the Postgrad Solutions Limited 2024. So you could see we're very, very well highly ranked, and these are students that really provide this sort of data and informs the data that you see. In terms of graduate success, which is what happens after school, we have a 94% success rate. That is 94% of our law graduates secure employment or pursue further studies as well. So you can see that Aberdeen is one university that doesn't only teach at the highest level, but also provides opportunity for you to secure employment or further studies afterwards, which I think everyone would be keen to have. Aberdeen is a beautiful city. I can say so much about Aberdeen, but I think I'll pass over to John, to talk about the city more generally. And from your experience, you're from here.
I am from this part of the world, Eddie. Although I was always very, very happy to hear how much you enjoyed it, and I was very struck once you'd been away on a research visit and you talked about coming home to Aberdeen, and I thought, we're doing something.
Exactly.
That's good. But we are located in the northeast of Scotland, a beautiful, beautiful part of the country. Outside today, the sun is shining brightly. Not always like that, but we're actually pretty lucky for weather. We don't have so much rain compared to the west coast. We're obviously, of course, in the center of the oil and gas industry in the UK, and indeed one of the key centers in Europe. And increasingly, of course, we are part of a real center of the energy transition in the UK and Europe as well. I think the slide just flipped forward there, Eddie. Can you go back one and just have a look? Yeah, so we're well connected. We've got an international airport, train station in the center of town. Not a big place. Population, as you can see there, just over 200,000. So it's a very easy city to get around. I think a friendly city, Eddie. I think you would agree.
I would
And
agree.
good. And also, if you're interested in outdoor pursuits, it's very easy to get from Aberdeen to the countryside, to the forests, to the hills, to the beaches, and so on. So if you're an outdoor person, it's really very well connected. Milder than you might think. We do, of course, have colder winters up here in the north, but actually not as bad as it could be. Good nightlife. Of course, I'm too old for all these things now, but for you young people, there's plenty going on in the town, and lots of museums and galleries, things like that. The campus is well located. As I say, it's not a big town, and therefore everything's quite close by. Accommodation and so on is close by. A few views of the campus there. So you can see that there's a combination of buildings. We're an ancient university. We date back to 1495. So I think one of the early ones you showed there, Eddie, was New Kings, one of the older buildings. That's the Taylor Building where the law school is. That's New Kings. So we've got a mixture of buildings, some going back hundreds of years, and then the last one that Eddie showed there is the Duncan Rice Library, one of the newer buildings on campus. Again, not a huge campus, easy to find your way around, and a very accommodating and friendly place. But Eddie, here we are. We're going to talk about energy transition. Go ahead.
Exactly. So again, like I said, we're trying to do two things here. We're giving you all a sense of the university, the campus, some of the experiences you're going to be having, and we'll be talking about some of the courses that we offer. But we thought it's also important to, shed some light on a really, really complex and dynamic topic. And it doesn't matter where you are in the world, whether you're in Africa, you're in Southeast Asia, whether in US or even the UK. This is a conversation that everybody is really having, because energy is at the center of human existence. If you're talking of power, if you're talking about moving around, whatever it is, energy is at the core. And there are so many confusions about how energy works and how law, as a social instrument of social engineering, functions within that very dynamic and sophisticated space. So here, myself and John would tease out a few of these issues. If you're studying energy law, energy transition, oil and gas, LLM with us, or business and sustainable development, any of these courses, even if you are doing things around, corporate law, commercial, you would see some of the issues that we're discussing here really being prominent and highlighted. So I'll pass over to John to share a few insights on such a very complex and dynamic topic.
Thanks, Eddie. So it's worth saying that, when I was a student, admittedly quite a long time ago, there wasn't really a separate subject of energy law. You could even argue that it's only really within about the last 25 or 30 years that we've really begun to talk about it as a distinct discipline. So what exactly is it? Lots of different ways of thinking about it, but I think maybe one of the easiest ways is to think about energy law being concerned with the rights and duties of the various stakeholders who are involved in the energy value chain or energy value chains. Because, of course, we're talking about lots of different energy sources, some of which operate distinctly, some of which eventually come back together again. So we're concerned with the rights and duties of all the stakeholders, whether those are investors in the early stages of energy production, whether it's extractives, whether it's generation, things like that, people involved in transport, transmission, transit of energy, or right down to the end user, the consumer, whether that's as an individual or as a corporation. So lots of different interests all the way along the value chain, many of them extremely high value or fundamental to the interests of, for example, the end consumer. The values themselves may not be very large, but the actual importance of energy to everything else that goes on in life is absolutely fundamental. So law plays a really important role all the way along the value chain, whether it's protecting investments, which could be at the level of billions of dollars over multiple decades, all the way through agreements to allow the transport and transmission of energy, all the way through to the end user. How are we going to operate these things? Are we going to be supporting markets? Are we going to have state entities involved? Law will play a role whichever of these formats is involved. Now, with all of that said, when I began teaching energy law, probably about 20, 25 years ago, we would always begin our courses by thinking about energy security. That was the sort of top level consideration for any state, whether it was a producer of energy, a net producer, or a net consumer of energy. Energy security, access to supply, access to markets if you are a producer. And that was very much the focus of our attention. And we looked at top level agreements like the OPEC statute, the IEA agreement, the Energy Charter Treaty, things like that. And we very much hung everything off that top level consideration with energy security. Now, as the last couple of decades have gone by, things have become much more complex. So whereas initially we would very much see both producer and consumer states focusing on ensuring energy security as a foundation for everything else that they wanted to do, over the years we've seen that become progressively complex because now, in addition to that fundamental concern with security, they're also, of course, deeply engaged with meeting international obligations in relation to climate change. And you can't really talk about energy without also talking about climate change. And then beyond that, we've also got sustainable development goals where we're concerned with access to energy as well. Now, in that last point, we may immediately begin thinking, as Eddie mentioned before, about interests in the global south, where we do have jurisdictions where large numbers of people do not yet enjoy access to energy. But it's also important to recognize that even in, supposedly developed parts of the world, there is an increasing concern with energy poverty. So even if you have, in principle, access to the grid or something like that, you may actually be struggling to afford that. So we've got these three problems, the so-called energy trilemma, which states are trying to solve simultaneously: ensuring security, meeting climate change obligations, while also ensuring access for populations to energy. Because without that access, economies won't grow. So that demonstrates how all of these things come together. Now, that is a very, very difficult trilemma to resolve, because you could say, well, let me focus on energy security. So here's a hypothetical. Britain still has huge amounts of coal. So if all we were worried about was ensuring that we keep the lights on, we could simply develop our remaining coal reserves. But if we did that, we'd entirely fail to meet our climate obligations. So that's a non-starter. And you could look at any of the problems, you could look at any of the solutions, and what you're trying to do is find solutions that do not then exacerbate the other arms of the trilemma. Now, not just after we'd begun to get our heads around the energy trilemma, social scientists in particular then said, actually, hold on a minute, guys, it's actually a quadrilemma. There's a fourth arm here. Now, it's defined in different ways by different people, but very often we're now talking about issues of social acceptance or the concept of a just transition. We know that we need to move progressively away from fossil fuels towards zero carbon or low carbon alternatives, but we need to do so in a way which does not run into problems of social acceptance and ensures that there is a just transition. There aren't losers in the process of moving from one source of energy to another. So that again adds to the complexity. And of course, in all of that, we've got the role of law. So do we want to, for example, compensate fossil fuel companies if we turn off their investments early? This is a live issue in many jurisdictions at the moment. These are the kinds of things that we're thinking about very actively, involved in research, looking at ongoing developments in international litigation, and so on. So there's the context we're operating in. It is deliciously complex. The only problem is it's real, intellectually fascinating, but actually it really matters. So it's something that we are deeply engaged in and committed to. And also, it's worth saying that this is an area of law where it's really impossible to operate in the vacuum only of our own discipline. We have to have an awareness of what is happening elsewhere. We don't have to become economists and engineers and geoscientists, but we do need to have an understanding of what these disciplines are adding to this complex picture of the energy transition. So we're very, very fortunate in Aberdeen that as a full spectrum university, we have colleagues actively engaged across all of these disciplines that I mentioned. So we have ready access to them. They have access to us. We've got long experience of researching and teaching together. And of course, those networks are not only within the institution, but across universities globally as well. And both Eddy and I and many of our colleagues are involved in those international networks. So that then leads me on to the final point there. We do have an active energy law centre at Aberdeen, which brings together staff and postgraduates in particular on a weekly basis to talk about our ongoing work. We're all involved in research in one way or another across multiple areas of energy law in this transition phase. And that, of course, means that our teaching is deeply informed by the research that we've done historically and also by the things that we're involved in as we speak. So just to give you one example, within the last 2 days, I've been involved in 3 separate meetings dealing with offshore decommissioning. That happens to be a kind of hot topic at the moment, and I've been looking at various aspects of that purely within the last 24 hours. Eddy, I know, will be involved in similar things as well. So I think that just rounds off that quick overview. Just maybe one last thing to say. One of the other interesting things for us as lawyers is that clearly the role that we are playing is being driven by the need for an energy transition. But then what's interesting is we often see law being used as a tool to drive that transition forward. So we are, on one hand, receiving information, receiving a push to engage with that transition, but then thinking about ways in which the tools that we have at our disposal, whether those are regulations, contracts, treaties, whatever, can actually then help to move in the desired direction. So again, that makes it a really exciting time to be involved in this topic. Eddy, back to you.
Thank you very much, John. Again, really useful insights, and you could gather from John's presentation that it wouldn't matter where you come from in the world, you can easily be part of this conversation. It doesn't matter if you're a new petrol state just discovering oil or about to discover, be it in Uganda or Mozambique or wherever, or you're in mature jurisdiction here in UK, in Europe, or even somewhere like Nigeria. Each of these conversations apply in different ways, and our experts on this topic have done an excellent job researching it and then sharing that knowledge with you. And you will be part of the center. You will be part of the Aberdeen University Center for Energy Law. That means not only will you be engaging with these issues in the classroom, you'll be part of all the seminars and the lectures and the workshops that will be going on. So it's a very well-rounded teaching and learning environment, I would say. Really helpful points there. Thank you, John. We'll come back to that when we look at energy law more specifically in terms of the topic. But there are two routes to our LLM programs. We've got the professional skills and we've got the dissertation route. With dissertation, basically you and I did dissertation myself. It's you writing a 10,000 word plus or minus 10% on a particular topic. Now, I always tell students, it seems very easy, but then you start a topic and you realize you've picked a PhD and not a master's dissertation. So always be mindful of the topic you pick, but it's really, hands-on, independent piece of writing. You get some supervision and support in the very beginning, but then you call the shots, you tell your own story. So, really, really helpful skill to gather in terms of research, in terms of producing a report that says that provides a really, really strong argument on an issue. You could also go the professional skills route, which is really, really helpful in terms of engagement, industry participation, and also developing some very useful soft skills, presentation, negotiations, and all of those things. So you would get those details with the link below, and these slides will be provided for you. So again, it's a choice whether you want to go with professional skills or dissertation. For prof skills, you would have about 2 to 3 weeks intensive sessions with different industry experts and facilitators. But with dissertation, it will just be you picking a topic and working with your supervisor to refine the topic, and then you'd go ahead to write. But again, people ask me which one is better. I cannot say that I'm biased. I did dissertation, but again, now I teach and coordinate professional skills, so I can see there is tremendous benefit in both of them. It's just a question of which one you decide. Some people have always also asked, if I don't do dissertation, would I be able to do a PhD? There's nothing limiting you. Even if you were doing professional skills, you could still use that knowledge to apply for a PhD. So don't feel you're shortchanged in any way. So I'll go on to some of our LLM programs. We've got an online portfolio as well. So we've got LLM in dispute resolution. We've got an LLM in international trade law or international trade law and treaty negotiation. So you have the choice between dissertation and prof skills. You've got an LLM in energy transition, and you've got an LLM in oil and gas law, both of which would have professional skills and dissertation if you so choose. We are ranked top 10 for online and hybrid LLMs in the world. So that gives you a sense of, how well we've performed as well. In terms of our on-campus programs, we've got the general LLM, and then we've got an energy and environmental law LLM. We've got commercial law and trade law. We've got human rights and criminal justice. We've got international intellectual property and information law, and we've got international law more broadly. So really, really fascinating topics. In terms of energy law and environmental law, we'll be doing courses and topics like state control, renewable energy, as well. You'll be doing things around carbon management, climate change. So there are lots of useful topics that you would find really exciting when you join us. I just wanted to stress that, the global scholarships, a lot of students would like to hear this, or potential students would like to hear this. We've got the global scholarship. And if you just follow the link there, you would see some details about the global scholarship. And now I think it's currently at about 8,000 for postgraduate fee waiver. So whatever fees you see on the screen, just take out £8,000 if you're doing a postgraduate study with us. And if you're doing undergraduate, subtract 6,000. So we've got a £6,000 waiver. That is huge. That is a lot, and does provide a lot of support for students who are coming to join us. And we've got other forms of scholarship in law as well. We've got the C.B. Davidson Scholarship Fund, which sort of gives you could give you up to £2,500 twice in a year, sometimes between April and May, and also sometimes between August and September. So you've got the opportunity to get an additional £5,000. It may not be up to that, but it's also possible. And I've seen that really, really helps students. That is cash paid to your account to support you in your studies. So yeah, it's something to really look out for. And so this is really a guide on how to get it. So if you go to the website, the link there on funding, you just click, where you're domiciled, your country. So to give a sense that it's international, and then you choose the subject, and you see all the funding opportunities that are available, both the international global scholarship and CB Davidson will be highlighted. And you can apply for CB Davidson even before you come, as long as you've gotten your admission, and it would be considered. So we've got a number of societies. Yes, we do a lot of things in the classroom and there's a lot of teaching going on, but you will realize that we do know that there is that value in peer-to-peer interactions and you learning from your colleagues and other students. So we've got the Bar Society, we've got the Aberdeen Student Law Review, we've got Lawyers Without Borders. I was part of Lawyers Without Borders when I was a student myself. Really, really exciting project we worked on for countries in Africa. We've got the Aberdeen Law Project. We've got Junior Lawyers Against Poverty. So really, really interesting there if you're looking at energy poverty or even poverty as a whole. Supporting local communities. We've got Commercial Law Society. We've got the Mooting Society if that's something you enjoy. And a lot of students have been part of that, winning awards. We've got the Law Society and we've got the Dispute Resolution Society as well. On-campus teaching. So I'll pass over to John if you want to say a few words on on-campus teaching using seminars and workshops and all of that. Over to you, John.
Thanks, Eddie. Yeah, so basically, we take our teaching really seriously at Aberdeen, and it's something that we really insist on from our staff. But of course, there's also an expectation on students, and at the postgraduate level, we try as much as possible to adopt a seminar approach. So you will have some lectures where you're simply being informed, often at an introductory level for a course, but then we move on to a seminar format where for any particular meeting, you would have some introductory notes to look at, then some reading to go through, and some questions or issues to consider. And then you would come to the seminar ready to discuss those issues. So the teacher then would be guiding you through that discussion, ensuring that by the end of the period, we've covered all the issues. But we've done so in a much more discursive way, a way in which you are much more engaged in the process rather than simply being talked at by someone like Eddie or me. So it's a much more engaged and interesting way of doing things. Now, inevitably, some students find that a little bit intimidating at the start because very often you're going to be speaking in a second or third language. Maybe you're not used to that way of operating, but genuinely, we teach in small groups. We've been doing this for a very long time. We're always extremely supportive, and what we find is that even students who might be a little bit shy at the beginning, really come out of their shell, realize that you're among friends, you're among people who are similarly interested in the topics that you are, and we have a really good discussion. In fact, Eddie and I were both involved in looking at group presentations just in the last couple of weeks. That was the last time we were in the classroom together, Eddie.
Yeah.
That was a really good example of how developing those skills of being able to discuss and present then flow through into one of the assessments for a course that we teach, and groups coming together producing really excellent presentations, delivering them with real kind of confidence and skill, and equally demonstrating the value of that seminar-based approach where they're reading deeply into a subject and are then able to respond really well to challenging questions. So that seminar approach really helps to develop your skills as a lawyer. We'll also use workshops. I think Eddie in particular, that's something that you do a lot of. Getting people together, bringing in maybe outside experts and speakers as well, looking at key topics in the areas that we're interested in, and just having a different format for learning. As Eddie said, dissertation usually the process begins in the early part of the new year, whether you're a January start student or a September start student. I think into February, there are sort of the initial meetings informing you about the dissertation process. And then there's a series of steps where you're identifying a general subject area, being allocated a supervisor, identifying a topic, developing your plan, getting that signed off, making sure that you've got a really good research question, clear plan, bibliography, initial bibliography, and then you're off and running. And that would work. You would be working through that. Then the writing would usually kind of kick in significantly after the May assessment period, and you would be handing in August. So that's how that works. And then we've got some block teaching. As Eddie mentioned, professional skills is an alternative route that we developed here at Aberdeen. Initially, I think in commercial law, and then quickly brought into our energy topics as well. And what that does is, as Eddie mentioned, replaces the dissertation with this professional skills module. What that means is that you would have some initial classes that are focused on the kind of generic skills that you need. And then, depending on the subject area you're in, you move on to 2 intensive weeks working in groups and working on particular tangible projects or problems. So, for example, in oil and gas law, that might involve looking at the negotiation of a production sharing agreement. It could be looking at, for example, in renewables, a planning application for a renewable site, a wind farm, something like that. It could also involve a bit of an insight also into other aspects where lawyers don't often have an immediate insight to what's going on, but it's fundamental to understanding the way that, for example, contracts are being developed. So some insights into financing. So depending on the particular subject area, depending on which year we're running it, and the people running those courses may sort of swap things around, but you'll be looking at tangible focused projects, usually week long, 2 in a row. And what I find because I'm often involved in the assessment of these, that by the end of those periods, people are pretty tired, it's pretty intense, but they're also really enthusiastic. They've really learned a lot and gained a huge amount of insight from those intensive exercises. And then they're assessed partly by individual and group reports during those 2 weeks. And then there's a bit of extended writing after, usually some sort of briefing report. We'll finish it off also being submitted in the August. So that's it. The sometimes people look at the actual classroom contact time and say, well, there doesn't seem to be a huge amount. But again, this is a focus on the different skills that we're developing at the postgraduate level. We don't want to spoon feed you. We want to support your learning. So you'll have seminars, but a lot of the work you'll be doing by yourself or perhaps with friends or with groups, doing the reading, coming ready to discuss things in the seminar setting. There's always lots of other things going on as well. As Eddy said, we've got our research centre meetings, other events and societies in the school as well. So there's always things going on. Equally, I think this is an important thing to stress.
Yeah.
We're a very available faculty. We make
Yeah.
a virtue of the fact that, we want students to engage with us. Sometimes over the years, people have almost sort of thought I must be joking. The professor says, you come along and have a chat with me because maybe you've come from a jurisdiction where professors are kind of hidden away behind layers of bureaucracy. But really here, we're very happy for you to drop us a line, set up a meeting. We can do it now, of course, on Teams or come to the office. And we're very happy to chat with you outside of the classroom setting as well. We're fascinated by these subjects. We want to share our experience with you, and we also want to hear what you're working on as well. So, we're an available group.
Fantastic. And that's because, again, we have international students from all over the world. So we might be giving you ideas and principles and theories, but it's also very fascinating to hear your take on these things from the various jurisdictions you come from. So there's a lot of interactions that certainly does go on beyond the classroom. You'll be starting with critical legal thinking for LLM students, which I think is a fantastic course to really guide you on how to write and how to answer essay questions, how to present your work, what is it, how do you reference, what does it mean to write a thesis statement and all of those sort of things. And I think it's really fundamental that you start off with this. And it's a course that I do teach, and I run a number of workshops. And I tell you, sometimes I do the common grading skills because I keep on telling students there's no point doing an essay without knowing the rules you're being governed by or marked by. And most times when I give students essays from previous years to mark, I find students even being more strict than myself. And I'm like, okay. So, again, you would understand what it is to get an A or a B by doing that course. And I think that's really, really helpful and fundamental. And that's because we all come from different jurisdictions. We all write differently. So learning things around plagiarism, how to reference, how to cite sources is really, really helpful. And also how to search for those sources. Because we have a really, really fantastic database of libraries that have all these resources. So it's no point you going into Google when you can get really authentic peer-reviewed sources from us. So really, really helpful, to start off with that course. You might have difficulties choosing, but remember, you've got a 2-week window in which to change. So you might start off with something and you're thinking, that's not working for me. you have within 2 weeks of starting to really change and do something like. But also once you start off, you'd see some introductory lectures from all the courses. So it gives you a sense of, where you really want to go. So, that's really no problem at all. We've got a fantastic range of support, and I sometimes don't think students make the most of this. As a student, I went into exam preparation workshops, I went into presentation workshops, I went into communication workshops, I went into writing workshops. All of these things are available. And we also partnered with the Language Center. So if you need additional support in your writing and expressing yourself, the Language Support Center would be more than happy to run workshops and services, provide services that would help you. So we really have a very strong support system. Same for careers as well. There's also a very strong support system with the careers department. They would look through your CVs, they will provide you with guidance, they can do mock interviews. Before I even got my job at the university, I went for mock interviews with them. So I try to encourage students, you're part of a community that has all of these services and you don't use it enough. Even things like, mental health and all of that, we've all got that also covered. So we've got the student support and they'll be more than willing and ready to help you. So I'll encourage you to go through and make the most of these services when you do come. We have a range of assessments. We've got exams, we've got essays, we've presentations. John was just telling you about the presentation session we were both in. We've got opportunities to contribute to discussion boards. That's basically where on our website, the education platform, you can make comments on an issue and people will respond to you. And you could basically chat over an issue. And it's really, really helpful for learning, just getting different insights and perspectives from people from all over the world. And sometimes I read through them and I'm like, wow, there's certain things that we don't know. People think we just know everything. Not at all. But so they're really, really helpful. And you could get marks for them. And then we've got timed assessments online. The reason we have all these different kinds of assessments is really because some people will do better in some. I always enjoyed writing exams. Some people preferred writing essays. Some people enjoyed presentations. Some people might have cold feet. It's just having to use all these different opportunities to be the best version of yourself. And that's because it's testing different skills. Your presentation skills is testing something different. The exams is testing your ability to think on the spot. Your essay is ability to think critically and provide some proactive guidance. All of these things are really, really fundamental. And then contribution and presentation also helps test your ability to work with others, because you're never really going to be working in isolation. When you go out there, you're going to be working with people. So it's really you being able to manage all of those, those experiences, and you come out well-rounded from the University of Aberdeen. And I think that's fantastic. We also have a dedicated law library. So you might have seen the big picture of the Sir Duncan Rice Library. That's the main library. Really beautiful, fantastic space. But we lawyers, we have the things that we need. We have our own kind of book. So you've got a dedicated law library at the School of Law. It's much smaller, but that's just because it serves really us. But it holds about 55,000 volumes and subscribes to all the main law journals. So you can be sure that, on almost any topic, legal topic, you will find a very variety of sources to work with. So from Westlaw to Hain Online, you will see lots of materials to use for your research, and you don't find yourself struggling at all. And we've got 5 fantastic centers. We've got the Center for Commercial Law, we've got the Aberdeen University Center for Energy Law, and we've got the Center for Public International Law, Center for Private International Law, and Center for Scots Law. And like we said, you might look at the time you're spending during your seminars and classes and workshops and think that's it. No, each of these centers have very specialized, dedicated programs that every student is encouraged to be a part of. Now, it's not compulsory, but you'll find it really, really useful. So if you're doing something like energy or commercial law, there will be several seminars, guest lectures, workshops, events, conferences that will be organized by these seminars, where you can unpack a variety of issues that may not be covered in class or might be covered in class, but again, you have a more in-depth different perspective during the course of the seminar. So you would always be welcome to attend them. But we've also got networks, not just centers. So we've got the Dispute Resolution Network, and we've got the Global South Law Research Network that I co-founded and currently co-convening with my colleague, Dr. Titi Adebola. And we really look at a variety of issues relating to the Global South and provide an opportunity for you to express your views, be part of the conversation, and even, present or write blog posts. So it's a really good opportunity to start up testing both your writing skills, your presentation skills, but also putting yourself out there to collaborate and work with others. So there's always so much to learn. So really, I would encourage people to be part of the centers. The news and the invites will be sent to you on to all master students. So again, I always encourage master students to look at their emails. I know it gets frustrating when you get a lot of emails, but these are really, really important emails that you should be engaging with. The sessions run throughout the academic year, and you would see a number of presentations, like I had said. Now, you'll be asking, okay, what a great institution. So who are the kinds of people that have been here? Well, we've got really fantastic alumni, including myself, and other fantastic colleagues. But we've also got Bethel Wilson, a first female justice of the Supreme Court of Canada. Really, that's big. We've got Leonard Dorian, Lady Dorian, the Lord Justice Clark. We've got Ian Livingston, and some of them you'll be seeing the pictures here. You will be seeing Liam Glenn. If you've watched the Game of Thrones, he was from us. He's an alumni, and you would see a really good energy expert here. Someone I'm quite familiar with her work. Also from alumni. Again, these slides will be provided. We've got the Chief Constable as an alumni. And I really cannot thank you all for being part of this. And I'll just hand over to John for any final words before we can take some questions.
No, thanks, Eddie. I would just very much reinforce what you said about all the services that we have. I'm always really encouraging students to take full advantage of everything that we provide. Yeah, just to look forward now to any questions that you may have. Very happy to answer those.
Thank you, John. And Eddie, John, thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. It's actually great to hear how passionate you are, but also quite objective about it as well. It's good to hear you talk about the nightlife earlier on in the presentation, John. Although by the sounds of it, I'm not sure how much nightlife you get up to, clubbing and whatnot. So thank you for your input there. I really appreciate that. If we can leave it on the screen there, Eddie, if that's okay. So the QR codes are there for any students that wish to ask any questions.
Yeah.
In terms of questions that have come in, before we get to that, John, I'd love to get your take on where you see the sector and the industry going in the next 10 years, because it's evolved so much in the last 10 years, it's crazy. But when we specifically look at global energy policy, let's say, it's constantly changing. So where do you see that going in 10 years?
I think if I had a definitive answer to that, Gareth, I'd be a very rich man.
You
because
would, yeah.
it really is such a moving target just now that it's extremely difficult to get one's head around it. Just to give you one example, with a few years ago, the International Energy Agency more or less said, right, that's it, no more investment in oil and gas, because basically everything we now need is already accessible from existing projects. And yet in the last couple of years, they've totally changed the game. And suggested that we're, at risk of price spikes and shortages unless investment carries on. It's an extremely complex world in which we're operating. So we're going to see a lot of, I think, dynamic shifts in relation to fossil fuels. Clearly, we need to be transitioning away, but the exact way in which that is happening is very difficult to read. We've got all sorts of complexity about the issue of compensating fossil fuel companies, hugely controversial, and there's a big question coming up about the appropriate use of resources in that sense. We've got real challenges for the renewable sector because the margins there are much lower. So we're getting a lot of sort of wobbling at the moment in renewables for a variety of reasons. In America, a lot of support's been withdrawn, but also market conditions in Europe causing issues. And therefore, for countries coming into this, really at an earlier stage, a lot of uncertainty. We've got a revival of nuclear. When I was working with nuclear guys back in the early parts of this century, I was expecting them to be asking me about decommissioning, and they said no. We actually realized that nuclear is zero carbon in operation, and therefore we fully expect it to have a resurgence as we move into the energy transition, and they have been proved to be correct. So that's a very big area we're working on as well. I could go on. Carbon sequestration is now moving forward at pace. Lots of questions over whether there is really going to be a hydrogen economy. A lot of countries are putting a lot of effort into that. And yet again, there's a lot of sort of dynamic shifting. Are we really going to go blue hydrogen? Or are we going to go straight to green? If we're going to go straight to green, are we going to use it in the ways we thought about 5 years ago? Or are we going to focus on the hard to abate sectors? Everything is moving really quickly. It's extremely exciting, but it's a challenge.
Yeah, I suppose you've got to be a bit flexible, haven't you? Because I'd imagine so much depends on the regulatory changes and what you're governed to as a nation, as a continent, as a in the world, really. So, Eddie, if I can come to you at this point, one of the questions that have been asked is, are there opportunities for students to engage in further research or even perhaps to elaborate further on that, contribute to like publications or anything like that?
Absolutely. So we've had students who have to work as research assistants on a number of projects. We still continue to encourage that. So yes, there will be opportunities for that, and they would be advertised from time to time. Some of them, of course, we've got PhD students who are quite well placed in the research sphere, but also we've got master students that are all equally contributing as well. So it depends on where is it coming from. Are you part of the center? And I think those are the things that you would need to demonstrate when you come in, that you've got that sort of enthusiasm, being part of a center and collaborating and working with colleagues. But yes, those opportunities are there. But also, it might not be necessarily peer-reviewed journals, but again, we've encouraged our master students to write blog posts. And sometimes during some of the assessments, I remember my colleague Daria will pick the best two or the best three to have them published on the university website, which I think is fascinating and exciting, to even have that. So there are these opportunities, and we do encourage students to make the most of them.
And Eddie, just keeping on the kind of the opportunities part, I've been at a graduate fair this week, and one of the biggest questions asked me is, I don't know what to do. I've got a degree in law,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't really know how to further my studies, what to do.
Mm-hmm.
What would you encourage any student that's watching today that says, I'm not quite sure what I want to do. I'm not sure if energy law is for me.
Yeah.
If it was for me, what would a potential career look like?
Mm-hmm.
What would that look like for a student? Because that's ultimately where we're all trying to get to, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So again, I remember when I finished my master's, I was torn between an offer from one of the biggest energy law firms in Africa and a master's and a PhD scholarship. And I remember speaking to, because I knew you're not always going to have a PhD scholarship, but the law firm was always going to be there. I remember picking up the phone and speaking to them and saying, can I come back after my PhD? And they were saying, would you take us after your PhD? It gives you a sense that the opportunities are there once you show, what you're capable of and you excel. One of the things we introduced last year is this partnership with industries, and we have run a career session where we bring in potential employers and industry players, including companies like Baker Hughes, and particularly the law department, to come and speak to our students and share insights of what is possible. And just one of their slides of the different legal roles that exist, is mind-boggling. Yeah, you kind of think of an energy lawyer as just one opportunity, but there tens of jobs that fall within that specification, whether it's a regulatory analyst, whether it's a compliance officer, whether it's a contract analyst. There are just so many layers to it. So there are lots of opportunities, and I do understand sort of the skepticisms around the industry, the energy industry. But again, energy is evolving, and as it evolves, the opportunities continue to exist. So I certainly would encourage anyone to study energy law, because the opportunities exist, but also not limit yourself as to what you think is energy law, and that's what we
Yeah.
really try to capture when you do join us. I'll let John share any insights here in this
John,
regard.
can I just jump in as well to further Eddie's question there?
Mhm.
It must make for fascinating classrooms because you've got this energy background along with this legal law background merging together to it's kind of chalk and cheese to a certain degree, isn't it? But they're coming in the middle to meet at this one education. So that must make for great viewing from your side.
I would totally agree. I think sometimes we say these things that we feel privileged to be teachers, but actually it's really true because uniquely on any given day we will inevitably be interacting with people from all over the world, whether online or whether in the classroom. And we do then get this real kind of melting pot of ideas and perspectives. and an opportunity to kind of share experience and learn from one another. And I think that then leads into the fact that our graduates do go on to good things. So, I've been, teaching on these programs for a long, long time. I'm also extremely privileged to be able to travel a lot, for my work. And it's not unusual for me to be in different parts of the world and to meet up with alumni who are now working in major law firms, in state companies, in ministries, in regulators, in finance, whatever it might be. And it's really fantastic, I think, for us to see that we have been able to help these people. These are the people who are on this call today, the people who will come to a place like Aberdeen are able, well-qualified individuals already. What we're doing is helping them to get to the next stage and move on to even bigger and better things. And to see that in action is really fantastic. Yeah.
Absolutely. Eddie, if I can just come back to you, one of the questions, and we touched upon it briefly there with John, is the classroom sizes. I'm guessing because of the niche nature of the program, the sizes of the classroom, they're not huge deliberately, so you have got that personal aspect to them. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. For example, if you're doing critical legal thinking and scholarship, that would be for all LLM students. So you'd have a large class there, and there's a benefit in having a large class in that regard. But even within that class, we then still break people into separate groups. So you'd have sessions with large classes where we'll be delivering lectures, really just giving you information. But then there will be sessions where you'll be broken into smaller groups, and then you have to work even in twos or threes. So there's a benefit from large and small, but also with individual courses. Yeah, you don't have very large classes with individual LLM programs, be it commercial law, be it oil and gas, be it energy transition. You've got a number of between sometimes 20 and 30, depending on the nature of the class. And there's also benefit, but even within a class of 20 or 30, there would be opportunities to really also break you guys into smaller groups of 5 or 10s, and you would have to work together, like John was talking, with the presentations, with the group works, with different tasks, with workshops. You might be put in a group where you have to represent an oil company, or you have to represent the government, or you have to represent other stakeholders. So it's a really comprehensive, all-inclusive learning that you would be benefiting from.
So I'm going to read out a question that's done here, and I'm going to elaborate further on the question as well. The question is, I'm from Sierra Leone. Energy issues are not that severe when it comes to transformation and change and legal representation. What do I need to still study? Is this for me? And furthermore from that, going all the way back to the start of the presentation, we spoke about the international nature of the law school, of the actual program itself. How important is it to remember actually getting input from nations from all over the globe? I mean, Eddie, prime example from Africa, you mentioned. How important is that to, there's been representations from all over?
Yeah, so I'm probably going to tap into Eddie's expertise here as well. But by chance, I was at a meeting yesterday where Sierra Leone was referenced, and so at the moment, if we look at its fossil fuel potential, it's one of the countries that is in an early stage of exploration for fossil fuels. Now, my experience, and I'm sure Eddie's as well, over the years, is that um, people often come to us from jurisdictions where energy issues are just becoming topical, becoming live. It can be fossil fuels, but it can be other things as well. And they will often say things like, well, we're coming to study at Aberdeen because the UK is a mature energy jurisdiction. You guys know what you're doing. And one of the things we often say is, well, we may now have a better idea of what we're doing, but we've often got to the point where we are by making a lot of mistakes along the way and learning from those mistakes and then trying to fix them. And we're still doing that as we speak. There are still issues that we got wrong, 60 years ago, and we're still living with the consequences and trying to sort of retrofit the law to deal with those. Now, what that means is that there's a huge opportunity for lawyers from a place like Sierra Leone, for sure, to come to a place like Aberdeen, not to look at the UK and say, well, whatever you guys are doing, it must be right. No, it's actually to look and say, well, what do we need to think about? What are the issues that we're trying to address? What are the interests that the country is trying to promote and protect? what are the issues that investors coming in are trying to promote and protect? How do we best deal with that in the context of our jurisdiction? And I think one of the frustrations for me is the number of times that a country enters into a new phase of energy development and doesn't always take full advantage of the experience that has been gained elsewhere. I'm not going to name names, but for a lot of energy lawyers at the moment, there are one or two jurisdictions where we look at what's happening and think, how can that have happened in a period when everyone knows that's not a good way to do things? That's a real frustration. So what I would say is, if you're coming from a jurisdiction where a particular energy industry is at an early phase of development, that's a huge opportunity to get in early, learn, from the mistakes of others, learn from the solutions that others have developed, and think about how those experiences can then inform the development of appropriate frameworks within your jurisdiction. So the fact that maybe things at an early stage actually creates a huge opportunity, and a really important opportunity for people with the right drive to really seize and try and make a difference.
Excellent.
Let me just add something there, Garrett. I'll use an example. John, you will remember Shakwa. Shakwa is currently the president of the Association of International Energy Negotiators worldwide, but he comes from Namibia, and he came from Namibia to do a master's in oil and gas law almost 10 years ago now. And upon doing that, went back and became the foremost oil and gas energy law lawyer, and now currently is the president of the Association of International Energy Negotiators, formerly petroleum negotiators, but now energy negotiators. So it gives you a sense of, you could come from, from Sierra Leone, or myself, I came from Nigeria, but I'm finding myself engaging in energy-related issues at an international level. Last week, I was in Poland giving a presentation at a conference, and the week before, I was in a different jurisdiction in the US. So the point is, yes, you're coming from, somewhere in Africa or Southeast Asia or wherever, but Aberdeen is an international university, and the teaching and the lectures and the engagement is done at an international level. And in some ways, I call it the Champions League. And so if you're able to come from wherever and play at that level, that is what we kind of like to see.
Great stuff. Eddy, just to wrap things up then quickly, because I'm just conscious of time. Can we talk about the intake dates and when a student can expect to be enrolled? There will be plenty of students that are interested in this that will go, right, I need to look now for September next year, or the earlier start dates?
So we've got a January start. So we've got two start dates. We've got January start and we've got September start. So if you're coming for a January start, you should be putting in, your admission. You should be getting your admission now and then applying for visa. Visa would take about 2 to 3 weeks, 21 days, they would say. So you should, if you're coming in January, then you should be getting your admission. And it's very quick to get admissions now. So it's in a number of days, 24, 48 hours, if you have all your documentations, you would have your admission. If you're coming in September, then you could be looking to apply, once the January start have started. So sometime from January, February, you should be securing your admission for a September start. So that's the opportunity. You could come in then January of 2026 or September of 2026. So you've got 2 entry points there.
Excellent, thank you. Eddy, John, thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. It's been a great session, great Q&A session as well. Thank you. If anyone has any questions, there are QR codes on your screen right now via Twitter, X now, LinkedIn, Facebook. Alternatively, please contact Eddy, contact John. I very much got the impression from the presentation earlier on, they are more than open, unlike other institutions, to be contacted directly and communicate with them and share their experiences, which do seem in depth and knowledgeable. So thank you very much for your time. Appreciated. Look forward to seeing you again, hopefully in 2026. And please go ahead and apply, find out more information, and let us know if you have any questions at webinars@postgradsolutions.com. Thank you very much for your time, gentlemen. We'll look forward to seeing you soon. Take care.